Hey guys, welcome to today's video. I'm Zmore the Dad in DPS, and this is a little bit of a new video type for this channel. We're talking about today's developer update that's came out. Now, one of the main things that is coming is a customization option change where you're getting player cards. Now, this comes in two different forms. You're getting basically the panel here. You can see that's like got a cool skull floating in the background, and you're also getting a little logo emblem thing, which also appears at the top right hand of your screen, and I'm assuming it'll appear in your in-game lobbies when you're starting as well. Now, I am a big fan of customization options. I think the more customization you get, the more kind of things that can make you unique. Great. I think this is a great addition and something Behaviour have needed to add in for a long while. On top of that, there is a UI change to an extent coming, but you can see here the panels on here look a lot darker and a lot more distinct. So maybe we'll see other UI changes coming with this that maybe they haven't really considered to be all that important. But it definitely looks good, looks crisper, looks cleaner, and I quite like what they've done there. Now, next up, they have done something to the Trickster. More specifically, they are sounding like they're nerfing him. When he's working on his next album, he's following his passion, throwing a boatload of knives at survivors. In this update, we're aiming to address points of frustration for both sides. For killers, many feel like the Trickster doesn't quite stack up to the other range options. For survivors, dodging blades could feel inconsequential, since so few required to injure you. So what I'm going to say about this, and I'm going to gloss over all the text. Essentially, Trickster now throws 4 blades per second instead of 3. So he's throwing more blades every single second. The blades, however, decay quicker. So if you've got your opponent up to 1 blade away from knocking them down, it takes 10 seconds for that laceration meter to degrade before it took 15 seconds. So you do need to hit your knives a lot more accurately. But at the same time, you're throwing more knives. And on top of that, the recoil has been completely removed. Now, if you've ever played Trickster, when you throw knives and you don't do anything, you go like this, and you end up looking into the sky tossing knives. That's gone. So it's going to be easier to hit the freaking knives, which is very interesting. I feel like that's a massive, massive buff to Trickster, personally. On top of that, they have changed his movement speed. Now, his movement speed was 4.4 meters per second. He's now going to be 4.6, and his tear radius has been increased by 8, so he's now a 32 meter tear radius killer. I feel like this is a massive buff. Throws more blades per second, no recoil, moves faster, and bigger tear radius. I'll be honest, I don't see the bigger tear radius as a downside. Yeah, I think it's going to be very, very interesting. Now, here's another thing that just terrifies me. Main event has now been changed. Main event now requires 6 blades to charge. It was 30. Main event's duration has been reduced to 5 seconds. It was 10. Now, the point I'd make about that is main event required 30 knives. It's now 6. That's 5 times the amount of hits to charge main event. Its duration has been reduced by 50%. That math don't work. that math does not work. I mean, it lasts for 5 seconds. Great, fine. But you can get main event going much more often. It's 5 times more often that you're triggering it for only losing half of its duration. That is insane. It's insane how much Trickster is going to be used in the near future. I am looking forward to these changes because I will be playing them. Now we'll move on to his add-ons. So Memento Blade's new effect decreases time between blades thrown by 5%. So that's essentially increasing the amount of blades you can throw per second. Inferno Wires increases duration of main event by 40%, was 25. So by having Inferno Wires, you're basically putting main event back to what it was. So it'll be 9 sec? No, actually that doesn't sound right. Well, it'll be closer to what it was. Then G-Wound's Autograph, new effect, decreases the number of blades required to charge main event by 1. That is insane. That's 5 blades. Tequila Moonrock increases duration of main event by 60%. Yeah, that's going to probably put it almost close to what it was originally. So main event pretty much back to where it is with that add-on. Fizz Spin Soda, new effect, decreases the number of blades required to reach main event by 2. So that's 4 blades. 4 blades into someone, and then you can main event them. That would be, oh my god. Waiting for your watch increases the duration of main event by 0.25 seconds for each blade hit while it was active was 0.4 seconds. And if you're hitting all those blades, you're going to be getting a lot out of main event, let's be honest. Iridescent Photo Card, new effect. For each consecutive blade hit, gain a stackable 1% haste effect up to a maximum of 7%. This bonus is lost when missing a blade or putting the survivor into the dying state. Now that could be relatively interesting in combination with main event. Overall, I feel like Trickster is getting a massive buff there. I think he's going to be very interesting to use and very interesting and fun. I don't know how other people are going to react to that though, so yeah. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the Made for This nerf. Now, if you don't know what Made for This does, you can get up to 10 seconds of endurance after healing another survivor, and while you are injured, you gain a 3% haste buff, unless you're exhausted. If you're exhausted, you lose the haste buff. So if you used it in tandem with Dead Hard, Sprint Burst, Balance Landing, then you would lose your Made for This buff for running around generally. Now, this is a perk that is probably one of the most annoying ones currently in Survivor meta, but it is getting nerfed. So instead of when you're injured, it's now going to be activated during Deep Wound, and then it loses the exhaustion requirement. So you can dead hard, get hit, and then activate your Made for This. The thing I would say about this is that for most killers, they don't cause deep wound. So survivors are going to have to deliberately put themselves into Made for This range via, well, Dead Hard, Off the Record, those kind of perks. Other killers, like Deathslinger and Legion, who quite typically will put people into the deep wound state, I don't think it affects them as much as some people might think, because if a Legion were to hit you currently with his ability and you had Made for This, you're getting it anyway. So I don't feel like it really makes a huge difference. The same goes for perks like not perks, like Deathslinger. Deathslinger is trying to hit you at distance, so I feel like it's not going to affect any of the decent Deathslinger players out there than one might think. They're already dealing with Made for This in a more annoying way anyway. So yeah, it does open up things like once you're in the dying state, not dying state, rather the deep wound state, you can still use things like Balance Landing or Live. So it does open up other options for things that you can do if the killer leaves you long enough and lets you, get exhaustion back or any number of things. So there is other ways that it could be used, but I just don't see that necessarily happening. Overall, I think it is a definitely needed nerf, because Made for This makes some killers not unplayable, but just a lot more unpleasant to catch people. And sometimes that 3% is the difference between hitting a survivor on the way to a pallet and not. And it has changed the game quite exponentially. But, not everybody's going to agree with that. Some people are going to be pissed off at this change, but that's really up to yourselves to figure out. Now, the last thing that they're changing is two certain maps, Garden of Joy. Now, if you know Garden of Joy, it's probably a killer's worst nightmare in a lot of cases. The central building is one of the best in the game, and the loops around the actual buildings are really good as well. It is quite a hard map for killers to play on average, and I'll be honest, I don't have as much difficulty as some people do with it. I actually quite like going to Garden of Joy as killer and as both survivor, but some people do have more issues. So they're going to be adding in potentially breakable walls and different things into the main building and moving around some of the windows. On top of that, they're going to be clearing up some of the vegetation and the objects that randomly bump you and stop you from getting round loops quite as cleanly, and making it a bit more easy to loop killers as well as killers to loop. So hopefully it'll change the map to being incredibly survivor sided to being a bit more even, hopefully. But that's gonna have to wait. They might end up putting something in that just makes it absolutely busted and broken. You never really know with behavior. The next map, or rather maps, is the Red Forest maps, which are Temple of Purgation and Mother's Dwelling, two of the biggest maps in the game. So their size is going to be cut down, and they're going to be removing some of the vegetation around certain loops that make them easier to spot where you can go round and, you know, actually loop killers and be looped by survivors. So that should be hopefully interesting. Hopefully they don't once again pop it too much in one direction or the other. But I'm assuming it's going to change the way the map is. They'll maybe have to condense palettes or condense loops. It's really hard to say what they're gonna do about it until we actually see it on the PTB. But that map will be changing, and you guys are gonna need to learn the layouts on there and figure out what is good and what is bad. So yeah, what I'd say about overall the entire patch. It looks quite good. I'm quite interested to see how it goes. Map balances are always a good thing, and Trickster is one of those killers that you don't really see very often. Don't get me wrong, when I see Trickster, it's kind of a mixed bag. Sometimes I get an absolutely cracked Trickster that can shoot me from billions of miles away. Sometimes I get a guy who can't even hit me point blank. It is very inconsistent. So I'm interested to see how it's going to work, and I look forward to playing the new Trickster when he comes out. Made for this being nerfed is a big thing for killers. I know it's going to spawn a lot of perk combos and people using certain things. I definitely think Dead Hard is going to enter more into the meta for that specific situation. But at the same time, if you are killers like Deathslinger and Legion, I think if anything, it actually makes the perk worse. And it also stops you from using Dead Hard as well. So we'll see how it goes in terms of that. But yeah, overall, I'm quite happy with it. What are your guys' thoughts? What do you think needs to be fixed in relation to this? Do you think Trickster's been overbuffed? Do you think Made for This has been over nerfed? Are you looking forward to the map changes? Either way, guys, leave that down in the comments, and don't forget to leave a like, a comment, and subscribe. Night.